Well, hello, my fellow Gambians, my fellow Senegambians, Africans, especially my fellow military officers, soldiers everywhere in Africa and across the world. This is retired Lieutenant Colonel Samsudeen Sarr, former commander of the Gambia National Army, coming back to continue what I have started 2 days ago. Today is the 4th of October, 2023, Wednesday. And the purpose of this exercise, as I said, is to start reading the book I just completed writing, entitled Testimony of a Gambian Military Officer and Diplomat. Like I said in my prologue, or the introductory statement I made on the 2nd of October, available on YouTube, my Facebook page, and WhatsApp, I talked about my intention of reading the whole book for the consumption of those who don't want to read or those who don't enjoy reading but can listen, and probably also for those who may not even be able to purchase the book. That is why the book is going to be read in English, translated in Wolof, for the consumption of the Senegambia population. So today, I'm going to start with chapter 1 of the book, Testimony of a Gambian Military Officer. And the heading of that chapter is Day 1 of the coup d'etat, 22nd July 1994. On the 20th of July 1994, a mere 2 days before the pivotal incident, the Gambia National Army, or the GNA as we used to call it, as we still call it, transmitted a nationwide press release via all primary radio stations in the country, as television was not yet available in the Gambia. The broadcast was an announcement outlining plans for a joint military exercise involving American visiting troops and Gambian soldiers. The slated exercise was set to transpire that Friday, and the press release aimed to mollify any public alarm that might arise from witnessing armed soldiers in the streets that day, an anticipated outcome of the exercise. The meticulous operational scheme had been crafted 3 months prior at the Banjul Army headquarters. It was designed to incorporate a contingent of American Marines who would disembark from their battleship on the 22nd of July 1994. The Marines arrived the day before, on the 21st of July, fully equipped with state-of-the-art combat gear, including amphibious tanks, rocket launchers, night vision equipment, and other cutting-edge combat tools that were scheduled for their inaugural field tests. But the operation order, as we call it in the Army, the simulation was to revolve around a scenario in which insurgents launched a forceful assault upon Banjul and its surrounding suburbs, an assault that outmatched the capabilities of the Gambia National Army. The main Army Yundum Barracks, housing the 1st Infantry Battalion, was designated as the base from which governmental or allied forces will mount a counter-offensive against the audacious rebels. The rebels' primary objective was to seize the seat of government in Banjul. In the plan's progression, The government was scripted to seek military aid from a friendly foreign nation. This important role was to be enacted by the visiting U.S. Marines, deployed to intervene and stabilize the crisis. Employing their amphibious tanks, these Marines were to deploy dismountable troops from Banjul, advancing eastward. The selected rebel forces from within the Gambia Army were to be neutralized between the advancing American contingent and Gambia National Army troops, converging from the urban area's western flank. The apex of this strategic exercise was slated for the Denton Bridge, situated 4 miles from Banjul. Hence, the cautionary press release explicitly identified this bridge as the spot where armed soldiers participating in the exercise might be visible on the 22nd of July, 1994. So, as the Gambia National Army troops from Yundum Barracks commenced their march eastward on that fateful morning, with intentions of overthrowing the PPP government in Banjul, the majority of Gambians who crossed paths with them on the streets misconstrued the situation. Many believed it was all part of the radio-announced exercise that has been buzzed about in recent days. Remarkably, a considerable portion of us within the Gambia National Army were equally blindsided by the revelation that a real coup was underway. Personally, I had been firmly convinced that the exercise was going to proceed as scheduled, because the scant details I had heard about a coup plan had ultimately proven to be unreliable. A brief investigation I conducted at the suspected camp, Yundum Barracks, yielded no substantial evidence. I therefore remain resolute in my belief that a coup was an implausible scenario in the Gambia, largely due to the perceived risks involved. Even though the Nigerian command, which had overseen the Gambia National Army for 2 years, was grappling with internal disarray, I couldn't fathom any member of the young, inexperienced army having the audacity to challenge the authority of the Nigerian commanders. It was Colonel Alassane Akoji, the Nigerian acting army commander at the time, who first brought to my attention the rumors of a coup plan at Yundum Barracks. However, the manner in which he conveyed the information on that Sunday, the 17th of July, 1994, a mere 5 days before the event, left me with an unsettling premonition that he might be joking. Captain Sarr, he began, you must have heard about the soldiers from the 1st Battalion holding clandestine meetings with intentions to overthrow the government, haven't you? Colonel Akoji held a position of considerable influence among the Nigerian officers within the Nigerian Army Training Assistance Group, or NATAG, functioning much like the British Army training team, but this so-called foreign training delegation assumed roles ranging from trainers to commanders, planners, and advisors for both the Army and the Gambia government. As the senior officer in charge of administration and quartermaster department of the Gambia National Army, Colonel Akoji was not only highly intellectual, but distinctly arrogant. He displayed an unwavering willingness to belittle anyone, anytime, and anywhere. Possessing a mastery of the English language, both spoken and written, he will deliver biting words of sarcasm that could easily undermine the intellectual fortitude of anyone daring to challenge his authority or ideas, regardless of your correctness or on a subject. he could render you incorrect, deride your achievements when praise was due, publicly mock you, and trivialize any formidable problem brought before him, all as a means to assert his dominance or assume complete control of the situation. His physical stature was short and compact, yet exuded an imposing aura. Before I could formulate a response to his revelation about the secret coup meetings allegedly transpiring at Yundum Barracks, he continued by suggesting that I might already be privy to this conspiracy, even hinting that I could potentially be involved. With a superficial grin, he seemed to imply that he knew more about my interactions with the men of the 1st Infantry Battalion than I realized. I couldn't help but chuckle at his insinuations, convinced that he was merely toying with my mind, a game he often played with us, the senior Gambia National Army officers. Deep within, I believe that Colonel Akoji harbored vulnerability, concealed beneath a facade of unapproachability, which he employed to establish dominance over individuals, particularly his subordinates, even when surrounded by his peers, or in the presence of Army Commander General Abubakar Dada. Colonel Akoji consistently took center stage, dictating actions and setting the tempo. He effectively controlled the trajectory of the Gambian military, serving as the spokesman, the writer, and critic, supporting General Dada until the day a new commander was dispatched to replace Dada. However, on that Sunday morning, the colonel abruptly steered the conversation back to the upcoming military exercise involving the Americans. Yes, I had visited his residence to discuss the final particulars of the war games and the protocol for the visiting guests. Clearly, he harbored reservations about the joint exercise with the Americans, driven by obvious reasons. At the time, the Americans openly criticized the Nigerian government under the leadership of General Sani Abacha, who had seized power by annulling Nigeria's presidential election, an election widely believed to have been won by Chief Moshood Abiola, a civilian Democrat then incarcerated. Had it not been for the insistence of Gambian officials at the Ministry of Defense, the Nigerians might have vetoed the exercise as a means of diminishing the influence of the U.S. Embassy staff coordinating the program. Recently, the Nigerians had been consistently declining most of the significant courses offered by the Americans to Gambian officers, citing concerns that the GNA personnel were not adequately qualified. The U.S. Air Force, in particular, had proposed 4 slots for young Gambian cadets to attend flight training courses in the U.S. with the intention of helping the Army establish its first Air Force unit. Our disappointment was apparent when General Dada rejected the offer for the same reasons, that there were no qualified Gambian officers to attend the flight courses. However, Mr. Solman Jangha, the permanent secretary at the Ministry of Defense, was determined not to allow the Nigerians to cancel the exercise this time based solely on General Dada's assertion. Commander Dada alleged that the Americans had ulterior motives, suspecting them of espionage to gauge the strength and capabilities of the GNA. Mr. Jangha dismissed these claims as groundless. Reflecting on Colonel Akoji's cryptic communication 4 days prior to the incident, I now believe he was indirectly hinting at an actual coup plot within the ranks of the Gambian officers in the GNA, in which I was suspected of involvement. At the time, his remarks held little significance for me due to my lack of understanding or my total innocence. On the morning of the 18th of July 1994, I visited the office of the Permanent Secretary to inform him about the coup conspiracy that Colonel Akoja had mentioned at Yundum Barracks. Mr. Janha acknowledged the circulating rumors and assured me that a thorough investigation was underway. He refrained from disclosing the specifics of the investigating parties. I found it perplexing that despite being a military staff officer under his authority, he had not shared this matter with me earlier, nor did he elaborate further during our conversation. Was he also considering my possible involvement in the plot? Though he did not explicitly state so, his reticence left me wondering. Later that afternoon, I made a few phone calls to soldiers stationed at Yundum Barracks, who I believe would have information about any coup rumors circulating within or outside the camp. Prior to my assignment at the Ministry of Defense as a principal staff officer, that's 2 years ago, I had commanded a platoon at C Company, one of the 2 infantry companies at the 1st Battalion in Yundum Barracks. I had to call to find out what is going on. I'll stop here till next time to complete the rest of chapter 1. You guys have a nice day. Thank you very much.